Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinema Flow podcast. I'm your host, Zach Abdulbaki, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Macon Blair. He is the writer, director, and producer of the new comedy film Idiots. The film follows two idiots, played by Dave Franco and O'Shea Jackson Jr., who are tasked with transporting a troubled teen to rehab, but their simple job spirals into a chaotic journey of drugs, danger, and crime as their passenger derails their plans. The supporting cast features Mason Thames, Nicholas Braun, and Peter Dinklage. Idiots will be released in movie theaters everywhere on Friday, August 28th. It's a fantastic movie. I highly recommend it. Now, please welcome to the show the director of Idiots, Mr. Macon Blair. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Hey Zach, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time. I gave the audience a little taste of the plot, but in your own words, can you describe what the film is about and where the idea came from?
Yeah, it's a road movie. That classic formula of trying to get from point A to point B and then everything goes wrong along the way. It's two guys that are trying to transport a teenager to a treatment facility as part of his sentencing agreement. And the idea came about because the producer, a fellow named Alex Orr, who I've known for many years, he knew some people that knew some people that did this job, which in the normal course of things is a very regulated, well-trained profession. The people that Alex knew in his own description were it was a little more chaotic and a little more unsupervised, and it seemed kind of dangerous. And he thought that was a fun premise for a road movie type comedy, so we kind of took that and ran with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great road movie. It kind of reminds me of The Last Detail, but more comedic.
Every time we were pitching it, we were like, it's the last detail, except for everybody's an asshole and they're on drugs. And that
Yeah,
was kind of that was the whole package right there.
absolutely. And at the center of this movie, you have Dave Franco and Osei Jackson Jr. Dave
Yeah.
Franco is credited as a producer, so I'm curious about what he contributed to the film, both creatively and in terms of getting it made.
Yeah, a lot. Dave, he had read the script a while ago, and many years ago when we were trying to make it, but at that time he was kind of too old to play the kid, and he was kind of too young to play the drivers. But when we had it out this time and we were sort of taking a second go at it, he was one of the first people we went to because we knew that he liked the script, and he came on board as not just as a cast member, but as a producer. And one of the first things he said was, I just got off work with O'Shea Jackson Jr. You should really look at him. And also he had just done something with Mason, and he was like, you should really look at him. So he kind of steered us towards them, and they ended up being like this crucial trio at the center of the movie. So he was huge in that regard. And then the whole way through, even now, like we're in the midst of juggling teaser trailers and posters and stuff like that, and he's very under the hood and all that kind of stuff. So he's a real leader on the movie in front of the camera, but also behind it.
That's awesome. And yeah, the cast is just perfect. And you're part of the cast a little bit. You have a cameo as a drug dealer. I think
Yeah.
it's really cool that you act, write, direct, and produce. I'm curious, out of those four jobs, is there one that you enjoy the most?
No, I kind of I feel very, very lucky and really just want to be associated with movies in any way possible. I was a PA for many years, when I was younger. So like anything that can be near a film set, I'm good with. Each one of those they're kind of different. Like when you're directing, you get to have control over the whole output, but it's also your whole responsibility. When you're acting, you can just think about this one character, and everything else is not really your problem. And when you're writing, it kind of feels like there's no responsibility at all because it's just you in a room. And then once it goes out the door, it becomes somebody else's problem entirely. So I like them all for different reasons, but I would be happy to do anything I can get.
That's definitely relatable. Yeah, I love being part of movies in any way, shape, or form. In terms of writing, I mean, this movie reminds me of some of the R-rated comedies from the 2000s, sort of meeting like some of the Coen brothers' dark comedies. I remember I took Judd Apatow's masterclass, and he said in his in that class that for writing, it's like 33% personal inspiration, 33% from friends and family, and then 33% imagination, and then 1% dick jokes. I'm curious for you when you, yeah,
Just
when
1%? Really? Whoa.
when you're writing, how much of it is personal inspiration versus, friends and family or imagination? Is it, I'm sure it's different on like every movie though.
Yeah, it is different. I mean, this one, there's not a lot of personal. I mean, like, not a lot of this literally happened to me. It's more like with Davis, sort of the idea of not really feeling like you fit somewhere, and not really liking yourself a lot. There's personal things that I can relate to, perhaps, but I never did this job. I was never, a driver or anything like that. So a lot of it is just pulled out of thin air. A lot of it is then during pre-production going back and being like, okay, what sort of house did we get? Did it have a room up front, or did it have a long hallway? And then everything gets rewritten to what the reality is of what you have to work with. And things get cut because you don't have enough time. So there's a practical component of like what you really have to work with: time, space, what the actors are like. A lot of things kind of get changed because they might feel a little different in person than what you were thinking about they would be when you're on the page. As far as what proportions those are, what numbers, that I wouldn't even begin to know how to quantify that. But there's always something personal going on, even something with like, well, Toxic Avenger, very cartoonish, very over the top, very silly. But what I was thinking about in that one was like, what can I sort of bring to that does feel personal, so I feel connected to it as I'm working out all that silliness and all that foolishness. And it had something to do with being a father, being a parent, and having a kid. And it's not literal. That's not really what the relationship was like, but being able to think about that and apply that to a bunch of foolishness like glowing mops or whatever. I do draw on that stuff a lot, but I wouldn't say it's like, oh, a certain percentage of it is this or that. It feels more murky than that. It's all mushed together into one big soup, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like all your movies have a great display of imagination, but there's always an emotional core, even something like Brothers that you wrote and didn't direct.
Yeah, really quickly, Brothers, I was a co-writer on that. I always like to want to clarify that. It's not something that I sort of calculate. It's kind of like trying to figure out what the expectation of the type of movie it is. So if it's something like Toxie, then it's like wanting to have some kind of like a superhero story to it. For something like this, it's the guys getting from point A to point B, and then within that, just trying to find something that makes sense to me emotionally. So that on some sort of emotional level, it makes sense to me, so that I can have an idea where I'm going with it, if that makes sense, like, because otherwise it just becomes a bunch of stuff in a row, and I don't know what it's supposed to feel like. So that's a big.
Absolutely. It always feels very thoughtful, your scripts. I want to shift to the cinematography for a minute. You have some really creative shots in here, like the split diopter shot in the motel room, as well as the tilt in the hallway. So, can you tell me about some of the conversations you had with your cinematographer about how you wanted to approach the look and feel of this movie?
Yeah, I mean, there was a great DP on this. His name was Guillermo Garza. He shot a movie called The Thicket that I was a cast member on, and it shot out in the wilderness in very cold temperatures with a very short production schedule. And he was so fast and just was able to shoot these really great looking images, but with a very compressed schedule. And I just thought, from a practical standpoint, that would be great for us. And so we got him on this, and we just talked a lot about how to really simplify stuff and make it feel energetic and exciting, knowing that we didn't have a ton of days. We didn't have a lot of there wasn't going to be a lot of extravagant sort of sequences. It all had to be pretty bare bones. And he just has a great eye, and it's kind of like a process of spending a lot of prep time watching movies that we both like, and pointing to this and saying, "Oh, I like that for whatever reason, colors or framing or whatever it is." And then there was an interesting thing that I really, at first it was kind of scary, and then I really came to fall in love with it, which is because the schedule was so tight and we had everything really precisely shot listed and storyboarded. It was worked out, but we weren't able to get a lot of the stuff. Like, we would get about halfway through the day, and it would be clear like we're not going to get like this next 8 or 12 shots, or it's just not going to happen. And so it sort of forces you in the moment to boil things down to what's the most essential version. So you mentioned like the hallway. I think that was originally going to have a lot more coverage going on, and we were going to do something with each one of the characters. There wasn't time for it. So it kind of just became like, how do we do this basically in one shot and account for all four of the characters and the sound of the cell phone, which is at the other end of the hallway, and all this stuff. And it became just this one shot, and he put a little tilt on it at the end. That was all Guillermo, and it works so much better than if it was like this cutty, checking in with close-ups of everybody and then doing this. It just becomes this one kind of graceful thing, and I like it way better. And we wouldn't have thought of that if we weren't so compressed with time. And so it was kind of a silver lining to that.
Yeah, that's the tough thing with live action filmmaking. It's not always about what you want to do, it's what you can do, but I feel like you always maximize the creative potential of how to shoot every scene in like all three of your movies.
Yeah, I mean, it when you're sort of in a great way forced, for me to, if you're sitting in a production office months before or weeks before you shoot, rather, and you're kind of like, okay, they're gonna come down the hallway, so I'm pretty sure that at a bare minimum, like the lowest number of shots that we need for that to work is 4 shots for each of the, and you think that we can't go any lower than that, otherwise it won't make sense. And then you get there and you're kind of like, you can't have 4 shots, and so you figure out a way to do it, and you realize that that was the true minimum, and it works better for itself that way.
Absolutely. And you definitely feel the hard work on screen. I have a fun question for you.
Okay.
Nicholas Braun plays Pricklebush the werewolf in this movie, and he's absolutely fantastic. He reminds me of Alien and Spring Breakers, but somehow even more unhinged. I was
Uh-huh.
wondering if you could tell me what Pricklebush's top four films on Letterboxd would be. I feel like An American Werewolf in London would have to be in there.
Yeah, American Wolf in London, probably at least one or two of the Wolfen movies, probably. I think the original Lon Chaney, The Wolfman, would probably be in there. And then I think he would probably put the original Texas Chainsaw in there too. Even though he considers himself to be a werewolf, I think he would have that in there just as backup.
Yeah, he was so funny. It's literally, I feel like he had a blast doing that role.
Yeah, he auditioned for that movie years ago when we almost made it, and it was this really special, chaotic, insane audition that was way longer than it had any reason to be. And he was like just doing also, he'd like walked out of his house and was like talking to people in character that didn't know what was going on. Anyways, it always stuck with me, and years later I was always thinking like that's the best audition I've ever seen. So and that was before Succession came out. So when this came together, my feeling was like, I really hope we can get Nick, but he's probably kind of outgrown us by now. And when we reached out to him, he was like, "Oh, I've been waiting for you to call. I heard that it was happening, and I was hoping you wouldn't forget about me." So it's something he's been thinking about for many years as well. And as we speak, he's off recording. He just went off and started recording more music as that character, and just like I think he wants to make an album.
Yes, we need the Prick-a-Bush the Werewolf album. I need it.
Now
The
more than
music
ever.
video was so good in the credits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's got more music videos now too. So
that's awesome. I also loved Mason Thames in this movie. I mean, he's despicable, but I
yeah,
want to
he's
ask you,
rough.
without spoiling anything, do you think Sheridan has changed by the end of the film after seeing the consequences of his actions at the end there?
No, I think that's part of it is that no, not at all. He 100% has not. That's the little kiss at the end there. So I think in the normal course of things, he would get some tough love and be redeemed and sort of learn the error of his ways. But in this movie, it felt important to me that he not that's not what this movie's about. It's about Davis finding his own way, but Mason's character gets no redemption.
Absolutely. And I like that because I feel like a lot of movies these days just always want to redeem the villain or the bad character in the movie. I like that this one, I mean, I think it's realistic. And I loved Davis's voiceover at the very end there about like how, God's will, compared to like having agency. I'm curious where the idea for that part of the movie came from, that part of his character.
It was just that like earlier on in the movie he talks about how he's like he's trying to be good, but he's sort of like even when you first meet him and he's talking to his former boss, the minister, that it's sort of like it's all out of his hands and like I didn't know, and when he gets accidentally very stoned, he even says that, like, he's basically saying, like, it's not my fault, it's not my fault, which is an understandable way to be, but I think what the whole point of what he's doing here is, like, in a goofy comedy movie sort of way, which is defined by all sorts of ridiculous shenanigans. He figures out how to take control of his own life and kind of like himself a little bit more. And so that's what that him sort of talking about that at the end is sort of like him coming to terms with, like, taking some responsibility for that, which I think, like, to me is it's not a super happy ending, but that's the one victorious aspect of the ending. The fact that Mason, you understand, is not going to face Sheridan, his character, is not going to face any consequences. That's the bummer ending. But I agree with you. It's just there could have been a version of the ending where he gets his ass kicked, or he falls into a, tar and feathers or something like that. But that just would have been, I think, like a kind of a more fantasy type ending, and the idea that he's gonna skate on it seems kind of more realistic and kind of more plausible. And so that's what I felt like that needed to happen. But if there wasn't some kind of a victory, then the ending would have been too bleak. And so to me, the victory is Davis, like, learning that for himself.
Absolutely. It's a really good character arc. Also, you and your pal, Jeremy Saulnier, are both from Alexandria, Virginia. I'm
Yes.
wondering, is there anything about the city you grew up in that shaped your sensibilities as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's about that specific town as much as it is the time, but it was just, mid late 80s, very early 90s, and we were just really completely unsupervised. It was very, like, free range latchkey kid type of childhood, no screens, of course, and so everything was like we were just in the woods all the time with somebody's Super 8 camera, or somebody's Jeremy's mom was able to borrow a VHS camera from the school where she worked, and those were like treasures, like, because there weren't easily accessible cameras everywhere. So when you got your hands on one, that was an amazing thing. And we just spent all our time in the woods shooting scenes for these goofy little movies, and for better or worse, that's how we figured out how to shoot stuff and special effects and makeup and everything like that on a very rudimentary level. But that's what got us started in all of that. And more than, like, learning how to do it, that's what really fostered our love of doing it, was all of that. And I'm grateful that that was the environment that we had at that time.
Absolutely. And you definitely feel that 80s influence in the poster for this movie, it looks like a Drew Struzan poster, the way it's all painted. I'm curious if you were involved at all in the making of that poster, or was that all the marketing department?
So the poster, we had a great poster designer named Devin Gibbs that, once again, Dave had worked with before, and Dave knew. And so we just kind of pitched him that concept, which was definitely Drew Struzan inspired, but also, like those covers of old pulp
Yeah.
novels, like old crime novels that are painted. So he just took a bunch of stills from the movie, like everything that's you see on that poster is like a frame from the movie, and then he just kind of, like, touched them up and did a bunch of shit to them. And so that was all him. And he also did the one that's more like traditional photography based, where they're kind of leaned up against the car. So he's got this great range of artistic styles. But that was us working in collaboration with the marketing department at IFC, who've been really, like, from the get-go, they were like, tell us your ideas, and we were like, okay. And so it's been a real kind of teamwork oriented sort of process, which has been great.
Yeah, they're both really good. I feel like the traditional photography one is good for like just like seeing it in the movie theater and getting familiar, but then the painted one's the one I would want on my wall.
That's exactly right. We call that one the payoff one, and the first one was kind of the setup. So yeah.
Yeah. Also, the film is very well edited. It's like a tight hour and 40 minutes, which is perfect for this movie. I'm
Uh-huh.
curious, how hands-on are you with the editing process? Do you select which takes are going to be used for each shot, or do you kind of more leave it up to the editor?
Both, and I'll tell you what I mean. This is another one of those things where it's just sort of like good luck. I directed a few episodes of a TV show, and they just assign you the editor, and so you're kind of like, oh, I hope we hit it off. And Dan McMaster was his name, and we totally hit it off. We became really, like, good friends through the process of that editing. And as soon as that ended, I really wanted to make sure that he could come over to this one, because I mean, he's very fast like Guillermo, but also is able to kind of think outside of, like, see potential in things outside of what's exactly written down in a way that I'm not necessarily able to do all the time. So I will, at the end of every day, I give him my selects and I'm like, these were the takes that I think were the best. But then he goes like, yeah, I don't look at any of that. And he'll just kind of like assemble like his version of what he thinks is great. And then he and I work together and kind of whittle it down with that in mind. So it's a little bit of both, but like I really do like leaning on outside collaborators like Guillermo, like Dane, and just have the sort of idea be that like I'll give you my idea of what I think is best, with the understanding that none of it should ever be set in stone. And it's just kind of like that should be taken as a starting point for a larger conversation, and then trust that they will bring in cool shit that would never have occurred to me. And then it all sort of comes out in the wash.
Absolutely. And it's paced very well. I feel like you can rewatch it multiple times and it's you'll always pick up on something new. Also, this is a great movie to watch in the theater because you'll get to hear the audience laugh and react to all the funny moments. I'm curious, what is your favorite movie theater?
My favorite movie theater?
Hmm.
These days, I have two that I really like. I live in Austin, Texas, and I love the Austin Film Society Theater. It's very beautiful, kind of old school theater with big red curtains, and it's very lovely. But I also, for just the straight sort of multiplex, there's a Galaxy Highlands right by my house, and it's one of those theaters that, you know, like everybody that works there, I have like a lot of teenagers that work there, and it's like a classic multiplex theater, and everybody is always super nice, and I take my kids there all the time. It's just a fun vibe at that theater too. So those are the two that I like, where I live right now.
Nice. Also, do you know what your next film will be? Are there any scripts that you're currently working on?
Well, no, I don't know what it'll be. I have a couple of things that I'm working on. I have some things that are done that trying to see, but it's one of those, you know, it's like as soon as one is done, it's sort of like you go right back to, you know, Monopoly, you go back to the square one. And that's where we are right now, is just back to trying to figure out what the next one would be. I like to try to have a couple of things that are possible because you never know which one will actually be able to go. So we'll see. But at this point, I don't know.
Awesome. Well, sir, I really want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me. It was
Yeah,
truly
man.
an honor to have you on the show. Before we go, please let the audience know where they can follow you on social media so they can keep up to date with everything you have going on.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Had a great time talking with you. I am on Instagram and I think it's just Macon.Blair, but I'm really sloppy with it and I don't really check it all that often. So that's where I exist though.
Awesome. I'll put a link in the description, and I hope I get to talk to you for your next movie, whenever that comes out.
Hey man, anytime you want to talk at all, you have my information. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to talk to you again.
Awesome, sir. To everyone listening, be sure to check out Idiots in movie theaters on August 28th. It's an awesome film. I highly recommend it. And that does it for today's episode of the Cinema Flow podcast. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you next time.